My name is Brock Noland, and I'm the Vice President of Internal Engineering at PH Data. Tram is a tool that we built and give access to all of our customers to use at no additional charge. So we have some questions that we run into with customers. How do I automate user and project onboarding and access requests? These can take up a bunch of time and honestly can be done incorrectly, which slows project onboarding. We see this a lot because when we get onboarded into customer environments, sometimes it'll take a week or two just to get access provisioned to our data engineers so they can complete the project successfully, which is just a waste of everyone's time. And the same thing is happening for the customer data engineers as well. How do you integrate Snowflake with ServiceNow, Jira, or whatever your ITSM tool is? How do you ensure Snowflake stays organized and doesn't become a mess? How do you enable self-service for Snowflake so that users can request resources and have it go through an approval workflow as opposed to setting up meetings and pinging people? Tram is a governed self-service tool for Snowflake. When you're successful with Snowflake, or even during a reasonably sized POC, there's going to be a lot of requests for accounts, for databases, for schema, for access to resources, and to warehouses. There's no reason for Snowflake administrators to spend time provisioning these objects when we can do it in an automated fashion and ultimately get a much better outcome by doing so. Tram has a number of capabilities. So Tram can manage the users on a Snowflake account. It can manage access control on a Snowflake account, and it can enforce an information architecture to make sure that your data is organized. It can connect to Active Directory or whatever your directory tool is as well, and is typically used in concert with a ITSM tool. Today, we're going to see the story of two fast-growing businesses. Cold Tacos is using Snowflake for marketing data analytics. They're a fast-growing taco business, and they did a Snowflake POC. It was successful, and they moved into production. They're provisioning all the objects manually because that's what they did in the POC. Hot Tacos is also a fast-growing taco business, and they also are doing marketing analytics on Snowflake. They, in their POC, provisioned the objects manually, but then they took a step back and implemented Tram before they moved to production. And ultimately, Hot Tacos is moving a lot quicker on Snowflake now because they have that automation to get projects and users and access requests implemented automatically. And so at Hot Tacos, Snowflake has become the data platform of choice. And so we're going to log in and show you both environments. And then we're going to actually provision an account, provision a project workspace, and provision access to a particular data set in the Hot Taco environment. Cold Tacos, they have Snowflake, they have demand for Snowflake access and objects and things of that nature, but they're just using email to manage this. You email a distribution list, you get one of the Snowflake administrators that is behind that list, and a couple enterprising Snowflake administrators have a little bit of automation that helps them do this. Other ones are just doing the provision manually. And ultimately, the net result is that things are slow, there's errors, and the environment is a mess. So let's go take a look at that now. Like I said, we actually have access to Cold Tacos environment here. You can see all their databases over here. They've got delete me, they've got don't touch, finance spelled wrong, my database. There's 4 marketing databases. One is POC, the other 3 might be prod. No one really knows where the prod data is. You got to ask around a whole bunch of test databases. And this is the natural outcome of not having a strong process and automation around provisioning of these objects. This just happened naturally because of humans. If we go and look at their users, we can see that this login name, that's their actual username in Snowflake, so it's very important. We can see there's the Snowflake service account, but there's really no standard here. So it looks like Mike and Sam's email is their corporate identity is being used, whereas Biff and Frank, it doesn't look like it's necessarily tied back to their corporate identity. So we know that automation is not being used on the provisioning of these user accounts. If we go and look at the warehouses, which warehouse should you use? No one really knows. There's no tie back to projects for chargeback or anything like that. And it's just a bit of a mess there too. Lastly, we've got this role, it's called Dev Marketing Read Only. So actually really nice name there. But what we found, and this is more common than it should be, if we describe the role, we find that this read-only role actually has access to the sysadmin role. Our guess is that someone was frustrated. They couldn't quite get the grant statement correctly. And so they just granted sysadmin role and figured they'd fix it later, and it hasn't been fixed later. Again, this is just the net result of humans doing things manually, not having a standard information architecture standard around deployment of these objects. So if we go back, let's talk about Hot Tacos now. So Hot Tacos has the same demand. In fact, now, because they have such a strong process about getting onto the platform, they have significantly more demand. Their data engineers are able to move faster, projects are moving quicker. And first step is everyone goes into their service management tool. In our demo, it's going to be Jira, but it could be anything. And they request either access to the Snowflake environment, they request a new project workspace, they request access to some data set, and there's an approval process that happens to make sure that is approved. And then from there, Active Directory or another directory system is updated with the new metadata. And from that point on, Tram kicks off. It takes the metadata in Active Directory along with the templates that you define and generates the required Snowflake objects, be the users, databases, schemas, roles, warehouses, stages, all of those things automatically for us. And so ultimately, user goes in, creates a ticket. Appropriate person clicks approve if it's an appropriate request. And then boom, the object is provisioned in Snowflake. And you'll see that happen in our demo. So before I go do that, I do need to, there's a couple people in our demo. So I'm going to switch roles as I go through our demo. So we have Aria. She's a Snowflake administrator. And so she's going to be approving IT related requests. And we have Tim's a business analyst. Tim is actually going to request access to Snowflake and is then going to request access to a data set and is then going to request a project workspace. And Susie, she's the marketing data steward. She's going to approve the access to the marketing data. So let's actually go and look at the Snowflake environment first. So you can see we have dev marketing and prod marketing. It's very clear which data set is which. Now, this is based on a template that is completely customizable. We'll look at it a little bit later. You could have names of anything. You could have marketing in front of the environment. You could have, instead of separating it by database here, you could have environments based on different Snowflake accounts. Very customizable. This is just the out-of-the-box template. We also have some sandbox databases. So sandboxes are places where a group of people can come together and work on something in a little more flexible environment, a little bit broader privileges attached to those sandboxes. So we often see a new project, create a sandbox, learn about Snowflake, understand how it works and how they're going to lay their data out, and then moved up to a governed workspace, partitioned by environment, so forth and so on. And then we also have user workspaces down here. So this is really nice because it allows users to work in their own little environment where it's private to them, and they can really learn about Snowflake, try things out, things of that nature. So if we look at the users here, we'll see that there's two service accounts, one for Tram, one for Snowflake. And then the other two users are tied back to their corporate identity. We must be using automation to provision these users. And you'll notice there's no account here for Tim. We can see that the warehouses are tied back projects so that we can do chargeback and understand who's spending what, when. So ultimately, just a very well organized approach to Snowflake. And the net result is that users are able to make sense of what's in there. They're able to move faster, able to complete more projects. And we're seeing that in the Hot Taco environment. So now we're going to go and change over to Tim, and we're going to actually request an account. We're now Tim, and we're at the Hot Tacos service desk and going to request an account. So we click request new account. And it's going to be a Snowflake account. Now, the ticket's been created. We can see that it requires approval and before it's going to be provisioned. So we can go over and log in, go over to Aria's system. It's a request for an account. So this is an IT request, and she can approve it. So this account will be provisioned shortly. While that's happening, I want to go show you the templates. Just give you a quick view into the templates here. So this is an example of the user template. Like I said, this is completely customizable. This is what comes out of the box from PHData, but we have customers that, and we help customers customize this pretty significantly based on whatever it is they need or how they want to lay out their data, how they want to provision access. It's all very customizable and available here on our documentation. So if we go back over to Tim here and refresh the ticket, we can see that the request is changed to in progress. So now I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes. Tram actually runs in a Bitbucket pipeline. So it runs in a CI/CD environment. So it could be GitLab, could be GitHub, could be Gitbucket, Jenkins, so forth. And so I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes of what's happening here. We can see Tram ran here. And this is the output of Tram. Again, this runs inside of your environment, and it can run in any CI/CD type execution environment. Tram is actually telling us what it's going to do. You can see a plus on the left there, and it's going to create a user database for Tim. It's going to create a role or workspace role for Tim. It's going to create his user account, and then do the provisioning of the grants there. So if we refresh that ticket again, we can see Tram has posted back to the ticket, hey, we've provisioned the requested objects. And so now this ticket can be closed. Tim supposedly can log into Snowflake now. And you can see we've got it configured for single sign-on. And boom, Tim's able to log in. You can see he's got access to his user database, so he's able to start trying things and learning right away. Now let's go back into Aria's world here and just do that show users that we did before. And you can see Tim's account's been provisioned in a standard way. What Tim needs now is access to data. So he got his own user database, but what he really would like is access to the marketing data. And so he's going to do a data provisioning request and request access to a workspace in the environment. So Tim is requesting read-only access to the marketing workspace. Now, we submit this request, and again, needs approval. Now, this isn't an IT request. Marketing actually has a team of data stewards that really understand the marketing data, and they are the ones that allow people to access that data. So that's Susie. You can see here, Susie's got this request assigned to her, and she can review the request, prod, marketing data, yep, read only. I'm aware Tim is kicking off a project for the CMO. So yep, that makes sense. So I'm going to approve it. Now, behind the scenes, it's actually provisioning that access. This is Tram working behind the scenes. Users don't interact with this. Users would never see this. This would be just used for administrators and for PH data. We can see here, Tim is being granted the prod marketing read-only role. And if we go back to his ticket, Tram has completed the provisioning of that as objects. If I hit refresh, we can then change the role. Tim has access to the prod marketing read-only role, and boom, he can see the prod marketing database and he can start querying. He's good to go there. So now the scenario is Tim, he's done some analysis on the prod marketing data, and he's working with the CMO, and they want to kick off a new project. And it's Project Manhattan. They just want a dev environment for this Project Manhattan. What Tim can do is say, you know what, I need a new workspace, and we just need a dev environment. This is an IT request, so Aria is going to approve it, and then it'll be provisioned. So if we go over to Aria's queue here, this meets our standards. I'm aware this new project makes sense, and I'm going to approve it. Now behind the scenes, that Bitbucket pipeline is operating. I'm just going to summarize while that's happening what we've seen here. How do you automate user and project onboarding and access requests? You actually saw that happen where users can go into the ITSM tool, they can make their request, and the back-end Snowflake objects are automatically provisioned. How do you integrate Snowflake and ServiceNow or Jira? That's exactly what we did. In this case, it was Jira. We've done it at ServiceNow, done it with ServiceNow at other customers, probably the most common, in fact. And how do you ensure Snowflake stays organized? You need a really strong process around provisioning these objects. Now, the problem is that if you have a really strong process, but it's manually implemented, then it becomes a very slow process. So what you really need is automation to do that provisioning so that a user can flow through the system, create the request, get it approved, and then get the objects provisioned in minutes. And then it'll be governed and organized, but it's also a self-service process. Let's go back to Tim's environment and refresh this ticket. We can see Tram has provisioned the requested objects. Now we can go back and see the project that was provisioned. If we go into Snowflake here, we can see we have the dev_Manhattan project. And if we go look at the last execution, we can again see Tram told us exactly what it was going to provision down here at the bottom. A single project and a single environment with actually no users at this point requires 1213 SQL statements. If you have users doing this manually, you're gonna get the outcome that Cold Tacos has. So you need to have process and automation to make sure it's done well and done quickly.